In many parts of the developing world, rather than there being a rules world where I can rely on the rules to protect me and my investment and my business, it's really a deals world. And the problem with it being a deals world is it's very unpredictable what's going to happen to me. That inhibits investment, that inhibits innovation, that inhibits the creation of a productive economy.
Institutions matter for economic growth and development. But why is this, and how can we change institutions for the better?
Institutions are defining the rule of the game.
The norms, beliefs, the values of people in a society.
Institutions are made up of rules that govern the way we deliver service or we conduct business.
Institutions structure our government, our democracy, the way our laws work, the way our courts work.
We know what success looks like. What we don't know is how to get there.
The Economic Development and Institutions Project, led by Oxford Policy Management, brings together research and policy to provide evidence and insights into these questions. It aims to provide practical solutions that can bring about institutional change that will boost economic growth and ultimately improve people's lives.
If we want to foster institutional change, we need that people see the necessity and the benefits so that when the new institutional arrangement is agreed upon, it can properly function.
To address this ambitious question, a different approach is needed. OPM has teamed up with leading institutions, world-class researchers, and is working closely with policymakers and practitioners to carry out policy-relevant research. The aim is to provide practical solutions that can bring about institutional change. The programme is set out over 5 years and focuses on 4 research areas. The first, completed over the last year, sets out what we know and what we need to find out. Researchers have written 23 pathfinding papers on a wide range of topics from government and bureaucracy, social structures and informal markets, to the dynamics of the business environment.
Institutions determine who's cutting the pie, who's making the terms, who's writing the contracts, who's enforcing them. But they also determine who's going to get the power, who's going to get the wealth, and the process by which that takes place. Inequality, we've now learned, is sand in the gears. It's slowing the economic system down.
People move from the village to these industrial centers, to these cities that are starting to form. And both entrepreneurial creation as well as this process of movement has historically been determined by these underlying communities.
The family is one key institution that operates in many countries and particularly in developing countries.
We know that family play a very important insurance role.
And the family is playing an important role in settling conflicts.
Also set up rules about marriage, about inheritance, and all these have very deep consequences for individuals' life.
Since 1950, more than half of the countries have experienced situations of civil war.
The number of lives that have been lost in internal conflicts rivals the total amount of battle deaths in these interstate wars.
This is the major impediment for growth because of the existence of civil wars or potential civil wars.
The second research area will create a tool to help policymakers identify the weakest institutions and the most effective ways to reform them, an institution's diagnostic tool.
That tool will help policymakers diagnose the bottlenecks to growth arising from institutions.
A roadmap of institution building, of policy reforms.
Starting with Tanzania and looking at other countries in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, these studies will consider in detail the development of institutions and how they affect the economies and societies around them.
For countries like Tanzania, it is extremely important that we identify where the institutional gaps are, the impact of improving institutions on growth and development will actually lift millions of Africans out of poverty.
The third research area will aim to provide specific insights into what works and what doesn't through a series of randomised control trials. These trials will be linked across countries to understand if similar approaches work in different settings.
The point of all of these different approaches is to give you an answer that's going to let you have a larger discussion with policymakers in a more robust way because you're drawing on a number of different experiences at once.
They could test what is the cost effectiveness of each of these options. They will have to prioritize which options to test, what is more important for them.
We want researchers to do evaluations as a result of meeting policymakers who are making a change in their countries.
Matchmaking between researchers and government units and NGOs is really fantastic, and I could see going from one table to another table. There are possibly very, very interesting ideas.
It is our hope in the Ministry of Planning of Paraguay to create a lot of local capacity that we can do many RCTs in our daily activities. We will start collecting a robust body of evidence that within the same institutional context that will help us to improve our policy making based on evidence.
An extensive review paper has set out 3 overarching areas of focus: political institutions, legal institutions, and the transition from informal to formal institutions. The 4th research area is a set of case studies exploring the interplay between formal and informal institutions. While informal institutions are harder to measure and hence study, doing so will strengthen our understanding beyond the traditional focus.
In Uganda, between 1986 to close to 1993, we had a dual system. We had the official at a highly appreciated rate, and we had the parallel market at a depreciated rate. Government was running out of foreign exchange reserves as transactions were shifting into the informal sector. It has got the tendency of keeping away investors, especially foreign investors.
Having completed its inception year, the programme will set out a roadmap for these research areas. The Economic Development and Institutions Project is continuing to investigate how to change institutions for the better through practical actions that will boost economic growth and ultimately improve people's lives.
What I hope in 5 years' time, at the conclusion of this project, to be available is a toolkit that has all key lessons, a compendium of experiences from which the policymakers can learn and adapt to their own situation.
If we don't understand how institutions work, we can't possibly understand how economies change and how economies can grow and develop and eradicate poverty.